Okay, Math 8 students, here we go. This is a video for skill 23, 41, 55, and 64. These are preview skills for Module 7. They are review skills from previous math that you've done in former grades, so some of you will have no problem going through this. You don't need to watch this video. It is optional. It is here if you need help going through the steps and the examples of these skills. So if you need a review, if you want to see how they're done, if you want to see them walk through, that's what this video is for. You don't need to watch it from start to finish. Jump to the skill that you need to see and watch that skill. So if you don't need skill 23, go ahead and jump to the next skill if you need that one. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go through them in numerical order, and you can watch the ones that you need. We're going to start here with skill 23, finding a common denominator. And in this example here, it tells us to find a common denominator of 1/8 plus 1/6. So common error is that a lot of us will just straight add this, but when we're adding, we need to find the common denominator. We abbreviate that as the LCD. Okay, so first thing you do is you list all the multiples, then you're going to circle the lowest one they have in common, and then you're going to use that one as the common denominator. So let's go ahead and just jump into the try these and take a look at our first one here, number 1, 1/10 plus 1/8. The first thing we're going to do is list all the multiples of the number. So multiples are many. That's how you remember the difference between multiples. Oops, let's try to get the pen working here. And that means that multiples go on forever. There is an infinite amount of multiples of any number, versus factors, which are few. Every number has only a limited number of factors. Factors are things you multiply by that number to get that number as a product. Multiples are how many times, are the answer to how many of, sorry, let's try that again. Multiples are many of that number. So 10 times 1 would be 10, that's a multiple. 10 times 2 would be 20. 10 times 3 is 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. We're going to go ahead and stop there. And then we're going to go ahead and, this could go on forever, we're going to stop there. List the multiples of 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 56, I'm going to go ahead and continue them down here, 64, 72, and 80. And I can see that this is the first number that they have in common. This is the lowest number they have in common. So this is the LCD. So the LCD, or the least common multiple, oops, sorry, that's the denominator. Least common multiple, which is the least common denominator, is 80. So if you were to rewrite those fractions, your denominator, your new denominator would be 80. And we don't even have to solve, we're just finding the common denominator right now. So we're going to move on to number 2, where we have 1/4 and 1/16. So the first thing we do is list the multiples of each number. 4 would be 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. Now I can just stop right here because I know that a multiple of 16 is 16 itself, and I've already got my least common multiple. Okay, my least common multiple is 16, which also means my least common denominator is 16. And then again, we're not solving, that's just going to give you your new denominator. So number 3, we're going to list the multiples of our two fractions here. We got 3/4 and 4/5. So multiples of 4 would be 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28, 32, and so on and so forth. We're going to stop there. And then our multiples of 5, 10, 15, 20, and I'm actually going to stop there because I can see that I've got the least common multiple of 20 in common. So what is the lowest multiple the numbers have in common is 20, which means my least common denominator is 20. Okay, so that's skill 23 in a nutshell. I do just want to show you guys how you would convert those fractions as this additional information. So you have it. Now what I would do with this LCD is I would turn 3/4 into a fractional equivalent with a denominator of 20. And to go from 4 to 20, I multiply by 5, which means my numerator is going to be the product of 3 multiplied by 5. So that would be 15. That's my new fraction there. And then I'm going to convert this one here, my second, which would be 4/5. I'm going to make it an equivalent with a denominator of 20. And to turn 5 into 20, I multiply by 4, which means I do the same thing to the numerator. So 4 times 4 is 16. And that would be my new fraction there. So if I was going to go ahead and solve from here, I would use my new fractional equivalence, 15 over 20 plus 16 over 20. I have a common denominator. I don't need to change that. That's going to be 20. And then I'm going to add my numerators together, and that's going to be 31. Now that's an improper fraction. You could simplify that into a mixed number, but we're going to go ahead and just leave that as it is. No, we're not. We're going to simplify it. It's going to bother me. 1 and 11/20. So that's how you would use finding a common denominator to solve fractions. Okay, that is skill 23 plus a little extra. So you guys are going to go ahead and do the practice on your own and the check, and then you're going to move on to the next skill. So skill 41 is our next one, and that is multiplying decimals by powers of 10. Again, another review skill, and the beauty of this is that we are just moving decimal places, okay? So what we're going to do is for every time we multiply by 10, we are moving one decimal to the right. So if we are multiplying 10 times 3/10, we move the decimal one decimal to the right. We've got 1 0, we move it 1 to the right. Here, we've got 2 zeros, so we would move this decimal 2 to the right. This one we have 3 zeros, so we would move that decimal 3 to the right. Okay, so then it's got a couple more examples here, multiplying by hundredths and multiplying ones and tenths. But we're just going to go ahead and jump into the try these, example 1. We're multiplying 10 times 4/10. We've got 1 0, so we are moving it 1 to the right, and our answer is 4. We've got 2 zeros in this next one, 100 times 40/100ths. We've got 2 zeros, so we're moving 2 to the right. That would be 40. And this next one, 1,000 times 4 thousandths, or this is 4/10 again, right? If we just look at this. We have 3 zeros here in our whole number, so we are moving 3 to the right. So you're counting the number of zeros in your base 10 and moving the decimal that many spots over to the right. So looking at number 2, we've got 1 0 in our base 10. So we are moving that decimal over 1 in our decimal, and we have 0.6. We have 2 zeros. We are moving that 2 decimal 2 to the right, and we have 6.0, or you could just write 6 also, okay? Next one, 3 zeros in our base 10, so 3 zeros, or 3 places to the right, so we have 60. And our last one here, number 3, continuing on to count our zeros of our base 10, moving the decimal that number of places to the right, so 10 times 1.5, or 10 and 5/10 would be 15. We've got 100 times 1 and 5/10. In this case, you would read it 1 and 50 hundredths. We've got 2 zeros. We're moving that decimal 2 spaces to the right. and that turns into 150. That product is 150. 1,000 times 1 and 5/10, or in this case, 1 and 500 thousandths. We've got 3 zeros in our base 10, so we move that decimal 3 places to the right, and we have 1,500, or 1,500. And that's the summary of Skill 41, where we are multiplying decimals by powers of 10. You can just count the zeros because they're base 10 numbers, right? So that lets us just count zeros and move the decimal that many spaces. Okay, so now what you will do for Skill 41 is you will do the practice questions and the try these. Moving on to Skill 55. Skill 55 is simplifying algebraic expressions. Now this is going to maybe be a little bit longer explanation because a lot of us have not done this in a while and many of us don't remember how to do it. So what they do is they identify common variables here. They identify their constants and their variables. So let's go ahead and walk through each of these examples because I think it will be helpful. So we're simplifying algebraic expressions, and what we have to do is combine like terms. And when we combine like terms, often we use inverse operations if we have an equal sign in there. Now we're just working with expressions, which means there's no equal sign, but for the lessons that are coming up, you will have an equal sign in there. So you need to have this skill in order to build on it for what we're doing in Module 7. So let's take a look at example 1. We have 5 plus 3x minus 1. What we're going to do is put a square around the terms with the variable x, okay? And put a circle, I'm going to just do that, around the constant term. So a constant is anything that does not have a variable attached to it. So 5 is a constant, and it's minus 1, but we attach that minus to this number 1, this constant 1, and it becomes negative 1. We put a square around our variables. So any number that's got a letter attached to it is a variable. Always include that sign in front as part of that variable or constant. So we're going to combine the terms in each shape. We only have one square, so we don't change anything with our plus 3x. But we have 5 minus 1, so we're going to combine those terms. 5 minus 1 is 4. So here we end up with 3x, positive 3x, plus 4, because 5 plus 1 equals 4. And that's how you would simplify that. Now you can't solve it because you don't have anything that it equals, so you're just going to simplify that expression and leave it as it is. If we look at example 2, we've got b plus 7 plus 6b plus 5. Again, we're going to put a square around the terms with the variable b, so anything with our variable, and circle around the constants. Okay, so b is a variable, it gets a square, plus 7 is a constant, plus 6b, we take that sign with us, make sure it's a positive 6b, and a plus 5, that's a constant. So we got variable, constant, variable, constant. We're going to combine our squares and then combine our circles. So we have b plus 6b. Now the common error here would be to go 6b squared or 6bb. This is the same as 1b. You have 1b here plus 6b's, so you end up with 7b. And then we're going to combine our constants here. 7 plus 5. 7 plus 5 is 12. So we've simplified these down by combining like terms. We can't solve because we don't have anything that it equals, right? So we're just going to leave it here in the simplified form. Let's take a look at example 3. We've got 3a plus 7b minus 4 plus 9a plus 2b. Okay, so what we've got here is we've got a variables, b variables, and constants. So we're going to put a square around variable a circle around variable b, and a triangle around constants. Now it doesn't really matter what shapes you use for which, as long as you are consistent, okay? So looking at our variable a's, we got 3a, so positive 3a. I'm going to find another a. We got a positive 9a. Put our squares around that. And then let's go through and look for our b's. Put a circle around positive 7b and negative 2b. And then we're going to put a triangle around our constant. This is our lonely constant here, negative 4. Okay? So we've identified and separated. Now we're going to combine our like terms. So we combine our squares. We've got positive 3a plus 9a. That gives us 12a's, right? We've got positive 7b minus 2b. So 7b minus 2b would be 5b. And then we've got our single constant here, so we don't change anything. We keep that negative sign attached to it, and it becomes a minus 4. So our simplified expression is 12a plus 5b equals, 12a plus 5b minus 4, and that is our simplified expression. Again, no equal sign, so we can't solve it. We just leave it like it is. So let's take a look at our examples here. Or try these here. And I'm going to put a square around my terms with x and a circle around my constant terms. So 7 does not have a variable. It's a constant. I'm going to put a circle around it. Plus 3x is a variable. It has an x attached to it, and I'm going to keep that plus sign with it. Minus x, that's another variable, and this is the same as minus 1x, right? Minus 4, that's another constant. So I've got, listing my terms with x would be 3x and negative x, and that's going to give me, if I'm going to combine that, 3x minus 1x would be 2x. And then I'm going to list my constant terms here, which would be 7 and negative 4. And if I combine those, 7 minus 4, I get 3. So my new expression would be 2x minus, plus 3, right? That's a positive. 2x plus 3 would be my new expression. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to 2. I've got terms with a, those are my variables. I'm going to put a square around my variables, and I'm going to put a circle around my constants. So 5 is a constant. It has no variable attached to it. I've got 2a, and I'm including that plus sign, so it's a positive 2a. And then I've got a negative 7. That's a constant, so I'm going to put a circle around it. So I'm going to combine my terms with a, or list my terms with a. That would be a plus 2a. And there's nothing to combine it with, so that's all my terms right there for variables of a. Then I'm going to list my constants, which would be 5 and negative 7. If I combine those, 5 minus 7 is negative 2. Okay? So my simplified expression would be 2a minus 2. So I'm going to go ahead now and move on to 3. And I'm going to list my terms of x, terms of y, and constant terms. So I've got 2 variables and constants. So my variables of x, I'm going to put a square around. My variables with y, I'm going to put a triangle around. And again, it doesn't matter what shape you use as long as you're constant. And then I'm going to put a circle around my constant. Sorry, as long as you're consistent. Put a circle around my constants. Okay? So then I'm going to go through my expression and identify which gets what shape. So my terms with x are the ones I'm going to do first. So I'm going to just go through here. So I've got a negative 7x and a negative 2x. Okay, so negative 7x, negative 2x. I'm going to go through, find my y, and I decided to put a triangle. So a triangle 8y, and that's my only y variable. And then I'm going to go through and put a circle around my constant. So I've got a plus 4 and a plus 9. So 4 and 9. Now if I'm going to combine those, which is what I'm going to do, I have negative 7x and negative 2x. So combining those, I end up with negative 9x. Right? Negative 7 plus negative 2x, give me negative 9x. I have no change to my y's because there's only one of them. And then I'm going to combine my constants. So 4 plus 9. 4 plus 9 is 13. So my new simplified expression would be negative 9x plus 8y plus 13. That would be my new simplified expression. All right. So that's how you simplify algebraic expressions. We will be building on this skill in Module 7, so you want to make sure that you're understanding this. If you have questions, please bring them into class and ask. Please, please, please. Okay, moving on to our last skill is skill 64, and we are graphing linear equations. So what we're looking at here is we are graphing a linear equation when all the points are coordinates of the solution to an equation. So if you have an equation, which we have done, y equals mx plus b is this one right here, right? You thought you were done with slope. We can graph it. So what they did is they broke down the equation. So this is your x value, this is your equation, this is your y value. So, and that gives you your coordinate. So if you plug x into the equation of x plus 3, what do you get for y? In this case, they plugged in 0. 0 plus 3 is 3. So your coordinate is x is 0, y is 3. And then they plotted that. When x is 0, y is 3, right? They plugged in 1. 1 plus 3 is 4. So when x is 1, y is 4. Then they went and went ahead and plugged in negative 3. And you can plug in any x values you want. Use ones that are going to make sense to the graph that you've been given, in which case they probably didn't want to keep going this way because they would have run out of graph. So they went back this direction. And they've got negative 3. So negative 3 plus 3 is 0. So when x is negative 3, y is 0. So they plotted that. X is negative 3, y is 0. And the last one, negative 2, when x is negative 2, you plug it into the equation. Negative 2 plus 3 is 1, so y is 1. So your equation is x is negative 2, your ordered pair would be x is negative 2 and y is 1. And here we find that. And then we just draw a line through the points, just like they did here. So we're going to go ahead and do 1. And so we've got our equation, y equals x plus 2. This is y equals mx plus b form. This is slope form. And we're going to plug these into our equation. So when x is negative 2, that's our x value. Negative 2 plus 2 is 0. So our point would be x is negative 2, y is 0. Okay. So then our coordinates here are negative 2 and 0, and we'll plot those. Negative 2x and 0y, so that's our first point. When we go over here, we're going to plug in negative 1 for x, so negative 1 plus 2 is 1. So that's our y value, so our x is negative 1, our y is 1. Let's go ahead and plot that. X is negative 1, y is positive 1, so that's our second point. Third point, we're plugging in 0 for x, so 0 plus 2 is 2, and our coordinates then would be x is 0, y is 2. So when x is 0, y is 2. And the last point we're plugging in is when x is 1, so 1 plus 2 is 3. So when x is 1, y is 3. So x is 1, y is 3, and then we're going to just go ahead and connect those points. And that is our review of plotting linear equations. So you're going to go ahead and do the practice and check on your own. All right. If you have questions still as you're going through these, please bring them to class tomorrow, and let's go over them together. You need to make sure that you are understanding these for what we are doing next in Module 7. All right, I know that was a long video if you watched it from start to finish, but hopefully you have a better understanding of these review skills.